Canada's unexpected response to Trump's trade policies has sent shockwaves through the global economic landscape, leaving the U.S. administration completely blindsided. Why didn't the U.S. anticipate Canada's countermove? What happens when a major trade partner decides to strike back at the world's largest economy? This scenario unfolded when Canada made a bold move that defied expectations, catching the Trump administration off guard. With trade relations worth over $800 billion annually between the U.S. and Canada, even the slightest disruption in this relationship could have far-reaching consequences. However, rather than retreating, Canada stood its ground. By imposing retaliatory tariffs, diversifying its trade relationships, and deepening its ties with the European Union, Canada showed its determination to protect its economic interests. So what led to this surprising response? Why did Canada's actions leave the U.S. so unprepared? And what does it mean for the global economy? Over the past month, the Trump administration has taken a bold and aggressive approach with its trade policies, particularly against Canada and the European Union. By imposing heavy tariffs on imports, Trump's goal was to shield American industries from foreign competition. However, this approach triggered an intense backlash from some of the United States' most crucial economic allies. Experts have raised serious concerns about the potential ripple effects of these policies, which could disrupt critical supply chains, inflate fuel and consumer prices, and ultimately harm not just Canada, but also American businesses and consumers. For the average consumer, the consequences of these moves are already being felt. Higher fuel prices, increased production costs, and an increasing risk of job losses. What's even more concerning is the potential for these economic tensions to spiral into a broader trade war between some of the world's largest economies, leading to long-lasting consequences. But why would the Trump administration risk this escalation? Did they underestimate Canada's response? Canada, however, wasn't about to back down. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was swift in his condemnation, calling the U.S. tariffs completely unjustified and warning that these moves could harm both nations. In a swift and calculated response, Canada imposed retaliatory tariffs on U.S. goods of equal value, targeting vital industries such as steel and aluminum, and critical agricultural products like beef, dairy, and fresh produce. However, this was just the beginning. Canada knew that it had to take further steps to protect its economic interests. It aggressively pursued new trade partnerships, signing agreements with Europe and Asian nations like Indonesia and Ecuador, reducing its reliance on the U.S. market. This shift in strategy not only fortified Canada's economy, but also placed the U.S. in a precarious position, potentially losing a key trade partner right at its doorstep. But Canada didn't stop there. In a move that could alter the balance of power in critical industries, Canada, in collaboration with the European Union, formed a strategic minerals alliance. This alliance is a direct challenge to China's dominance in the global minerals market. Canada and the EU have come together to secure the supply chain for strategic minerals, including lithium, cobalt, and nickel, materials essential for the production of electric vehicle batteries, renewable energy, and high-tech industries. Currently, China controls more than 90% of the global supply of these minerals. But by forging this alliance, Canada and the EU are working to create an independent supply chain, thus reducing reliance on Beijing. This shift not only bolsters the economic security of both regions, but also sends a strong message to the U.S. Without a comprehensive and forward-thinking trade strategy, Washington risks being sidelined in the global race for the energy industry of the future. Meanwhile, Europe, which has also been grappling with the unpredictable foreign policies of the Trump administration, is increasingly concerned about its relationship with the U.S. After the U.S. engaged in secret negotiations with Russia over Ukraine without involving its European allies, many nations in the EU felt sidelined and disrespected. This diplomatic snub has led Europe to seek greater military independence from the U.S., reducing its reliance on NATO's U.S.-led command. Countries like France have taken significant steps towards strengthening their defense strategies, increasing military cooperation, and boosting defense spending. Together with Canada, the EU is reshaping the global strategic landscape, one that is now less dependent on Washington's leadership. Now let's look at how these developments might affect one of the most transformative sectors of the modern economy, electric vehicles, EVs. Canada's proposal to impose a 100% tariff on Tesla electric vehicles could have a far-reaching impact on the global EV market, particularly for US-based companies like Tesla. This decision isn't just about trade retaliation. It also carries a clear strategic message. Canada is taking steps to protect its domestic electric vehicle industry and to push for a clean, sustainable economy. If the tariff is enforced, the price of Tesla cars in Canada could skyrocket, making it harder for Canadians to afford these electric vehicles. However, the repercussions of this policy extend far beyond just Canada. Tesla, despite having factories in the US and China, still relies heavily on parts imported from China. If the US also imposes tariffs on these Chinese-made parts, Tesla would be facing tariffs from both sides, the US and Canada. This double jeopardy could severely impact Tesla's production costs, slow down innovation, and drive up prices, ultimately hurting both consumers and businesses in North America. This policy shift would not just affect Tesla. It could have a major impact on the entire North American EV industry. Companies like Ford and General Motors, which rely on parts imported from China to produce their electric vehicles, would also be hit with higher production costs, leading to rising prices for EVs. If these price hikes are passed on to consumers, it could slow down the momentum of the global transition to electric vehicles, a crucial step in reducing global CO2 emissions. EVs are central to both US and Canadian environmental strategies, and an increase in their price could hinder the adoption of clean energy solutions. If this trade war continues, the North American EV industry could struggle, and the global transition to electric vehicles could slow down. However, there's an opportunity here. If both the US and Canada can find a way to de-escalate tensions, the North American EV industry could benefit. Reducing tariffs and resolving trade disputes could help stabilize the supply chain, bring EV prices down, and accelerate the transition to clean energy. Such a resolution would not only benefit the EV sector, but also provide a boost to the global effort to combat climate change and build a sustainable economy. Now let's turn to the more personal side of this trade dispute. In December 2024, President Trump made a controversial statement proposing that Canada could become the 51st state. His remarks were not just casual banter, they were seen as a serious insult to Canada's sovereignty. Trudeau, along with other Canadian leaders, quickly dismissed the idea, making it clear that there was no possibility of Canada joining the US. This statement fueled national pride and resentment in Canada, leading to widespread protests across the country. A boycott of American goods was launched, with provinces like Quebec and Nova Scotia removing American-made alcohol from store shelves as a direct response to the US tariffs. This boycott wasn't just symbolic, it had a real economic impact. Canadian tourists, who have long been a significant source of revenue for the US tourism industry, began to reduce their visits to the States. This decline in tourism could result in billions of dollars in lost revenue for the US economy. The alcohol industry in particular was hit hard, as Canadian consumers shifted away from American imports in favor of domestic products. The bourbon industry in states like Kentucky, which relies heavily on Canadian buyers, saw a major decline as its products were removed from Canadian shelves. As the tensions between the US and Canada deepen, the economic relationship between the two nations stands at a critical crossroads. With trade and tourism industries already feeling the strain, the future of this vital partnership hangs in the balance. Trump's tariff policies have created a rift that's hard to ignore, and Canada's boycott is a clear sign of resistance. The question now is whether the US and Canada can work through these issues and restore their once strong ties, or whether this marks the beginning of a long-term crisis in their economic and political relationship. These tensions are more than just economic. They represent a battle over national pride, sovereignty, and the future of North America's place in the global economy. With both countries facing challenges and opportunities, the path forward will be pivotal not just for the US and Canada, but for the entire world economy.